have a few comments.
You bet. Good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me all right, Brad?
Yep, coming through good.
Uh, All right, perfect. Yeah, sorry I can't be with you guys all day today. I am traveling, so just kind of pulled over here to join you guys for a little bit. And I just wanted to cover a couple of things with you um, while I had the opportunity. And one of them is I just wanted to maybe give you kind of the NRCS perspective on the president's executive order, or known as 30 by 30. I think there's been a lot of discussion about 30 by 30 here in Nebraska, and I just kind of wanted to maybe give the NRCS's perspective on it a little bit. So when when 30 by 30 was put out there, yeah, I feel well, I was a little disappointed that the administration left it so kind of open ended and kind of vague. They did not really give any kind of a definition of what conserve meant, and it allowed a lot of folks to kind of put their own interpretation or their own definition on what conserve means. And I'm hoping most of you have had the opportunity by now to look at the actual Restore America the Beautiful plan that came out because of that executive order. And if you haven't seen it yet, I'd really encourage you to do so. Um, in the opening of that document, it does talk a lot about uh, the great stewardship that our producers have done in the past, and just wanting to continue to help them along that path of stewardship. It also talks about there's like 8 key points that they think will help achieve this 30 by 30 goal. And one of those points again goes back to voluntary conservation efforts. So I'm hoping, or I guess what I want to convey to you is that while there's been a lot of discussion about this being kind of a land grab, or the government kind of taking over on some of this stuff, I'm hoping I can maybe calm some of those discussions down a little bit with the fact that NRCS is going to continue to do voluntary conservation, and what we see coming out of this is actually an increase. I think we're actually probably in for kind of a major increase in our farm bill funding. So funding for CRP, funding for EQIP, funding for CSP, and even funding for our easement programs. I see this administration using that 30 by 30 to bolster these farm bill programs and give our producers an opportunity to actually increase the amount of stewardship that they're already doing on their land. So I'm actually kind of excited about that. I'm also a little fearful at the same time. I'm a little fearful that we won't be ready. And what I mean by that is we're trying to bring on a whole bunch of staff right now, and we're trying to get them trained up. And I'm a little bit afraid that the money might start flowing in before we get our staff all trained up and ready to do that. So we might get a little overwhelmed, in fact, and that causes me a little bit of concern. But I know we've got a lot of great partnerships here in Nebraska, and I'm pretty sure that we can all work together to find a way to make all that happen. So if you guys have any questions about 30 by 30, or if you guys want to talk about 30 by 30 at all, I'm certainly willing to do that at any time. You can certainly reach out to me and I'll gladly discuss that with you. But I'm hoping that if you read the plan itself, you'll find that this is really going to be more about voluntary conservation. So hopefully that'll calm some of the fears down. I don't want it to detract from our efforts that we've been doing with conservation. We've got a lot of producers interested in our programs, and I'm really hoping that that executive order doesn't detract from that. So please keep that in mind. And like I said, if anybody would like to have further discussion on that, I'm certainly willing to do that. Um, the last thing I kind of wanted to tell you or update you on is that my detail is scheduled to end here on June 18th. So I have just a little over 2 weeks left here in Nebraska. I've reached out to see if I could find out who is going to take over for me when I left, but I haven't been able to get that answer yet. They haven't decided for sure what the next steps are. So at the moment, I don't know what to tell you beyond June 18th. There's a chance maybe they'll extend me. There's a chance they might bring somebody else in, but I'm just going to say June 18th is my last day. And I just wanted to say thanks to all those of you out there that I've had a chance to meet. Granted, I have not had a chance to meet all of you like I would like to. Part of that's COVID related. Part of that's just because I haven't had a chance because it's been such a short time that I've been here in Nebraska. So I really enjoyed the time that I had here. It's been a great learning experience. It's been great to learn a lot more about Nebraska and all the great things that are going on down here. So I just wanted to take the opportunity to say thanks, because this was one of those chances where I didn't want to miss the opportunity to tell everybody thanks before I was headed back to South Dakota. So thanks again. And if you, like I said, if there's anything you guys need, be glad to help you out over the next couple of weeks while I'm still here. So thanks again, and I'll turn it back to you, Brad.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. I don't see any questions in the comment or the chat box, but if anything comes in, we'll make sure that those questions get to Jeff and go from there. So thank you, Jeff. So at this time, maybe I'll go back to Tammy Nordman. Is there any housekeeping things we need that you need as far as attendance or anything?
I'm trying to get the attendance list up right now. There is a couple phone numbers on there. Well, one just dropped off, which might be, not sure where that went. But if you are connected via a phone number, please contact me via email or just let me know who you are on, who jumped on. Other than that, I think we should be okay. I don't see anything else. Everything should be uploaded to the website. There are a couple changes on a few PowerPoints, but those changes shouldn't make a big deal today, and they will be re-uploaded again within the next couple of days or by the end of next week.
Okay, thank you, Tammy. There was a question came into chat that said, will we be able to view the meeting later since it's being recorded? And the answer to that is yes. I think you'll send that link out, won't you, Tammy?
Correct. What we do is I will download the video and then I send it to Joanna, and Joanna uploads it to our YouTube page, and then I will give you the link to that page. That seems to be the easiest for everybody else because sometimes it seems like people have problems accessing our website. So.
Okay. Thank you, Tammy, and everybody. So as I kind of briefly mentioned at the beginning, today I'll be going over just a few updates on CSP and EQIP, and the main thing there is going to be I'll talk about the local work group recommendations, some of the things that we have some action items on. And then Tammy Timms is our initiatives coordinator, and I believe most of you have met Tammy before. Tammy's going to be giving us an update on the RCPP projects. There's just a lot of activity going on with RCPP, and then she'll be giving some updates on SIG and on our CCA agreements applications and a few other things. So she'll follow up with that. And then we have Carlos Villarreal, our state soil scientist, will be giving an update on wetland compliance and some conservation technology update. And then after that, Jana with FSA will be giving us an update on CRP, some of the changes and management requirements. a lot of changes in CRP coming up these days. So then we want to have a little bit of time at the end for any of you who would like to give an update, things going on within your agency organization. We'll be sure to give you a chance to address the group at that time. So with that, I'll go ahead and share my screen. Okay, Tammy, do you see my PowerPoint?
I do.
Okay. So I'll start with CSP, and I don't have a lot to update you on CSP today, because we're still right in the early stages of we've got all of our applications ranked or got them assessed, and we're doing the ranking. But I just thought I'd give you a quick snapshot of what we currently have for active CSP contracts. 2,235 on 3.8 million acres and $157 million obligated in those CSP contracts. And the one thing of note here is that now that funding has decreased in CSP, there are several different reasons for that. We will be able to obligate fewer and fewer contracts. We were at one time, hovering around that 5 million acre in CSP contracts, pretty regularly. So, but anyway, that's where we're at as of today. And so as far as funding, the update with the CSP Classic, the contracts that we're working on currently, we started out with about $8 million allocation roughly to begin with. We went through a funds assessment. The entire nation did an April 1st funds assessment where they look at available applications and progress in getting the assessments completed and those kinds of things. And so we were able to pick up another $2.2 million for the CSP Classic. So we've allocated that out to the field, and the field is currently working on getting those all ranked. We have not actually obligated any contract for CSP Classic yet, but we'll be getting to that very shortly. And then CSP renewals, we did pick up additional funds there as well from the initial allocation, and we have all of those obligated at $9.3 million, and then the CSP grasslands, we received $400,000 for that. So as we've talked before as well, we get a lot of interest in CSP in the state. We continue to have a lot of interest. And to put that in perspective, we had over 1,100 applications to begin with for CSP Classic. And so with the 10 million that we've got to obligate, we will only be able to fund roughly about 8%. It's yet to be seen, but we're anticipating having about 85 to 90 CSP Classic contracts with the funding. But we'll have another opportunity to request additional funds, which we will do on July 1st, but that's where we stand today. The renewal applications, those are competitive now with the 2018 Farm Bill. So unlike previous to the 2018 Farm Bill, they're not automatically renewed. So it's a competitive process. So of the renewals, we obligated 289 of those, and that represented about 30% of the applications. And then the GCIs, those were pretty much guaranteed if it's eligible that those would get approved. So that's where we are. So So that's pretty much all I've got for you on CSP with the current status of the funding. So a little bit on the easements. Again, a little bit of a review here, but this year we did get 37 applications for WRE easements for 5,300 acres, and we did have one AL application, about 6,200 acres. This year, we are determining the values a little bit different. We're using appraisals instead of the GARC rates that we had in the past. And this is our geographic area rate cap map. But the significance of this now, since we're doing all appraisals, is that we had to establish a not to exceed rate within the state, which is $8,900 for irrigated cropland and $5,000 for all the other land uses. Which means if there's an appraisal that comes in over $8,900 on irrigated, it will be capped at the $8,900. Otherwise, it's every application that we move forward on will be using the appraisal method. So with the available funding that we have, we're going to be able to move forward and try to obligate 3 of the applications on 835 acres, estimating that to cost $2.3 million, and $600,000 is what we're setting aside for restoration costs. With the perpetual easements, we're responsible for 100% of the restoration costs. So that's what that's for. And we're currently in the process of getting appraisals completed and getting that process done on those 3. The one AL application is moving forward. Currently, there's work on eligibility and all of the background work there, the due diligence, and we're estimating $1.4 million to get that easement purchased. We were able to get a rep approved for Nebraska, and that's with the rainwater basin. It's in the central apply area in central Nebraska. So that was, we're real happy to get that approved. So that's with the Nebraska Community Foundation, the Rainwater Basin Joint Venture, and others. That we got funded at $1.7 million. We have a goal of purchasing and easements on 450 acres through that. So here's the project map for that rep. Like I said, it's in the central apply area of Nebraska. So we will be taking applications year round. All of our programs are a continuous application process. And for the rep, we did have an application cutoff date of April 30th. There was a lot of interest. We only ended up with 2 applications at this time, but I would say there's still work to, they're contacting producers and we will get applications. Currently working on those 2, and we'll probably fund them, and then looking at a fall FY22 application cutoff date to continue with that project. Just a quick update on the floodplain easements dating back to the 2019 flooding. Work is still continuing with those floodplain easements. Of the 21 applications, 4 have canceled so far, looking at about 5,500 acres that could be enrolled. The floodplain easements have about $20 million to obligate if all of those go through and get purchased and filed. So we'd have possibly 17 agreements on 3,800 acres. And so anyway, just kind of an update. that's been a long process to get that completed, but it is still ongoing, and we're still working to get easements in place. So on the equip, update on that. There again, kind of a snapshot of where we are with active equip contracts as of now. We have 2,200 active contracts and 880,000 acres with about $71 million in obligations. Of course, this active contracts, you know, that changes almost on a daily basis as contracts expire, and now we are in the process of obligating new contracts, and so in a couple months, you know, that number will increase by about another 600 or 700. So I just you know, we're not to the point yet where I could pull specific numbers of contracts and practices and you know, that detailed information. The software just won't let us do that until, with the application side, until we get those into contract status. So I'll just kind of review where we've got the funds allocated and give you the best update I can. But as a reminder, source water protection, we're required to have 10% of our funds obligated for that. Wildlife initiative is 10%, historically underserved at 10%. In the livestock related practices, we're required to obligate 50% towards that, and that has not changed, you know, for a couple of years. So again, we established a variety of separate fund pools. We've got all of the local fund pools with each one of the local work groups, 23 of those, some area historically underserved fund pools. And then in addition, this year we were required to have a disaster fund pool and set aside some funds for a possible disaster should we have another flood or a drought or, you know, wildfire, that kind of thing. And so anyway, those continue. So our allocation, we did with our recent funds assessment. I mentioned with CSP, we received an additional 2.2 million. With EQIP, we received an additional 3.3 million of general allocation for 24.5 million. Then that we have to distribute amongst our state fund pools. And then there's the breakdown of where we have those funds allocated with the 10% fund pools. Our AFO fund pools at $1 million, and we will spend $1 million on our AFOs. Our disaster, there again, we will hold on to that probably for a little bit longer. Things are looking good that we possibly can get through this year without a disaster. We'll see, but at some point soon we'll be rolling those funds back into the general pool and you know, and obligate those to other applications. I guess I would mention too, back on the 3.3 million, all of that was rolled into the local fund pools based on their high priority applications and what they had ready to fund and those things. So not much of it has been rolled back into our state fund pools. So a little bit more on the wildlife, the 2.4 million. We may not reach the 2.4 million, the 10%. We have funded all of the applications that we received. And earlier this month, at the wildlife subcommittee meeting, some of you may have attended that. You know, there's some good discussion about some promotional activities and different things we can do to get more interest and get more applications for the wildlife fund pool. So pretty much all the applications we received, we funded, and like I say, we may come up a little bit short. We will exceed our HU allocation probably by quite a bit. There's a 10% minimum. Historically, I haven't run the numbers yet for this year, but we are usually, about 20% of the funds go to beginning farmers, and we always fund every one of the socially disadvantaged applications that we get. Source water protection, we will have enough applications to utilize our 2.4 million there. Just an overview of the other funding that we do receive. It's targeted. So then National Water Quality Initiative received 1.8 million, and Tammy will get into that just a little bit more later. These funds have to be utilized within the NWQI, and those that we don't utilize will be returned back to national for redistribution across the country. The Water Smart with the Bureau of Reclamation, we have the 2 projects, and we've got good work going on to get applications within each one of these project areas. The Middle Republican was a little bit short of applications, so they have just went out and established another application cutoff date to see if they can get a few more applications to use up those funds. And then the Joint Chiefs project, it's kind of early on with that project, and we expect there will be some good applications and utilize those funds as well. Source water protection, just an update on that. We're going to move. We utilize the same priority area, source water priority areas in FY21. We had an FY20, and this is just a reminder of that map. And I see the legend didn't come through, and I apologize for that. But the red areas outlined are high priority areas. These are the wellhead protection areas in the state. So if we get an application in any one of those wellhead protection areas, those are high priority, and those get funded first off the top. The crosshatched areas are water quantity management areas, and the yellow or the golden areas are the phase 2 through 4 groundwater management areas. So we have funded all of the high priority applications with source water protection, and we are into the medium ranked applications. So that's going well, and we welcome any comments on moving forward in FY22 on any changes or edits or tweaks to this. So keep that in mind, and like I say, FY22, we can revisit this if we need to. Again, we established primary practices for source water protection. I'm not going to go through all of this. You can look at that when you get your copies of the PowerPoints. But I just point out that with source water, we are able to increase the payment rates on some practices. And those practices that we have determined to do that are with the Nrcs, with the source water protection. So again, this is the practices are another area that can be reviewed every year as we move forward to change to different practices or change the incentive rates, if we want to move some up to 90%. So keep that in mind as well. again, want to cover the option to establish 10 high priority practices. And these are, as a reminder, practices which we want to incentivize these practices. We think they're important practices, but they're underutilized. And we did choose to identify 10 practices for high priority practices in the state. And here's a list of those 10. These all we've increased the payment rate on all of these 10. And again, it can be up to 90%. It could be somewhere in between. So these were covered during the EQIP subcommittee meeting earlier, but it's still not too late if you have comments to just go ahead and submit them to us at any time. We'll need to make these decisions for FY22 soon. The practice payment schedule, we're kind of right in the process of getting that done. And we would need to identify those practices at that time. So within the next couple of weeks, we'll probably need to have any comments on the high priority practices if you have any. So the EQIP conservation incentives, this is one of those items that I was looking forward to giving you a good overview and rollout of where we are with conservation incentives. We've talked about this for 6 or 7 months. This is a portion of the 2018 Farm Bill that was yet to be rolled out through EQIP. And as you may recall, we were going to focus on soil health in Nebraska. Conservation incentive is required to cover the entire state. We could select high priority areas, and there were a lot of options for practices and resource concerns. And so we had everything queued up for a soil health focused initiative in FY21. All of the background work was done to select the resource concerns, get the practices identified in the process and how we were going to roll this out. We were in the blocks, ready to go, just waiting for the word to roll it out. And yesterday we were informed that they were changing directions on the conservation incentive contract for FY21, pulling it back. And this year it will just be a pilot program rolled out in 4 states, in California, Oregon, Arizona, and Colorado. And then in FY22, they will plan to roll it out across the entire nation. So I was, like I say, I was really personally, I was disappointed that we had this thing ready to go to roll out, and we thought we were going to announce a sign up back in late March, and then that got delayed. But I think there was some reasons that obviously they decided they wanted to look at that a little bit closer and maybe make it a little bit more climate smart types of activities. So anyway, yesterday afternoon, I deleted all my slides on how that was going to be implemented. And so currently it's not going to happen in Nebraska in FY21. So we'll watch for, the guidance and see what our options are for FY22. And then hopefully we'll have more to talk about in September moving into the FY2022. So then I do want to touch on the local work group recommendations that we did receive. And first of all, I just want to thank everyone who's on today who participated in these local work group meetings. they're a very important part of the process for the locally led part of these programs, and the input is vital, and we get a lot of good recommendations, a lot of good feedback from the local work groups, and so appreciate all of that we got. We did get, I think we got a report from nearly every one of the local work groups, and so that was very much appreciated. We asked for feedback on our fund pools, or ranking tools, or screening tools, and a practice payment schedule specifically, and we did get a lot of good feedback. I'll kind of go through some of that in a little bit more detail. But again, I want to emphasize to everyone that at the local work group meetings, we are looking for recommendations for all of the programs, not just EQIP. So if there's some things with CSP or RCPP or easements, that's the time to provide input and recommendations on those programs as well. So anyway, I'll just go through some of those, what I call actionable items that we pulled out of the recommendations. So from the practice scenario requests on brush management, and this has come up before, but again in FY22, there was a request to add a new scenario for mechanical and chemical ultra low infestation. So we have payments for heavy, medium, and low infestation. That's based on canopy cover. But there's also a need to take care of eastern red cedar, for example, when they're small, and these can be handled, with burns or that. So we will need to rewrite or revise our guidance documents, but we do actually have that payment rate. It's under mechanical hand tool scenario at a 2 to 5% canopy cover, and so then we do have that. We'll just need to get that clarified out to the field staff. But if we need to do that, we can. We have that currently. Herbaceous weed treatment, there was a request to add a new scenario for chemical ground application on difficult terrain, and very good feedback and explanations of how that would be used, and what they see as an estimated cost. And that's currently under review. We're taking a look at that to see if there's anything available. It's too late this year to develop a new scenario, but there may be something available that we can latch on to. We're not too sure. So that's under review. Really, conservation cover, request to modify existing scenarios to allow ability to hay or graze cover crops when converting cropland to grassland. That one is under review. Taking a look at that. This request on no-till has been coming in nearly every year for the last several years, but they're saying that we should no longer provide an incentive payment, or at least reduce this incentive payment to convert to no-till. And that was discussed, and the recommendation right now would be no change to current policy for FY22. There's still a lot of reasons to encourage some producers to move to no-till. There's still some need out there for that. Typically get a lot of feedback on cover crops, but the two specific recommendations this year was to allow cover crop incentive when the landowner tills cropland acres, and to frost terminated cover crop should be allowed to be used in more situations. And both of these are currently allowed, and we can do that. So there's no change to the current policy. And so again, we would just need to provide some additional training out to the field staff on how to use that, and if there's some confusion, we'll get that cleared up. There was some requests on waterways, terraces, and basins on how they're being paid. And again, this is a fairly common request that comes in, but we took a look at that. The engineering staff dug into this a little bit, and there won't be any change for FY22, but the recommendation to increase the payment rates, we'll take a look at that when we set the final payment rates, which will be done in July, after all of the costs have been established for all the components, and then we'll see if we can increase that payment rate or adjust it at that time. Some recommendations on sprinkler systems, center pivots. The request came in last year, it came in again. They would like to leave the VRI, variable rate speed control, on the docket. We took a run at that last year to the regional and national, and that was denied. The speed control scenario was denied. So we'll move forward with that again this year. And I would just mention that if there's interest in having a cost like that at the local level, there's probably some component costs we could help out if NRD or somebody wanted to establish their own payment rate or something like that. We'd be glad to get some of those costs that we have established in our payment schedule for other things. And then request, I'd like to cost share on filters to irrigate when the water source is from canals. And again, this is under review to see if there's something we can do with an existing scenario, or if there needs to be a new scenario. And it might be possible to install a fountain and keep a screen clear. So this one is still under evaluation, but that was one of those that we'll continue to work on. A lot of recommendations on planned grazing systems, 528, and some of these first ones here are carryover from last year. Last year, the recommendation, by the time we got to the recommendations, it was after the point where we could do new scenarios and that. So we said we would look at those again this year, and we did. And so a lot of these are just looking at changes to deferral or rest and deferment in that. And so we took a look at all of those requests, which involved changes to deferring and prescribed grazing and all that. So we can, after review, we decided that it can be done currently with the current scenarios. So there will be no change for FY22. And again, this is on our list to provide some clarification and training to the field staff on how to do those things that are being requested. And then there were requests for the 30 to 73% rest and requests and recommendations for what the payment rates should be in a couple cases. And again, with the current scenarios, if we utilize those correctly, we can do those things. There's no changes for FY22, and then we will be looking at adjusting the payment rate when we do those rate calculations, coming up here in July. So we'll take a look at those payment rates and see what we can do to make adjustments. So then the good news part of the planned grazing system was this issue has come up for several years. As you know, we talk about the deferment payment and the difference in rates from the eastern part of the state to the western part of the state. when we defer grazing for things like to build up fuel for burns, we'll defer the cattle. And with one rate across the state, it was just very difficult to make that work. So we did get a new scenario built, thanks to the ECS staff and others for working on that, and that did get submitted. And so this is approved. I haven't seen the final scenario yet as of today, but I'm pretty confident that that will be available to be selected in FY22. So we will have a deferment rate for the eastern 1/3 of the state, which will be a different rate than the western 2/3 of the state. And so that's good news. And one of those that after a couple of years of work, we finally were able to make happen. There was another one which comes up about every year, and for good reason, is on pumping plants. And the issue here is with the policy has been that we would not put a new pumping plant on an existing well for several reasons. But the one main reason is that when a pump needs to be replaced, typically that's a maintenance issue, which is the responsibility of the landowner. And the other one, it would be the well integrity. Is the well structurally sound to handle a new pump for the lifespan of that pump? So a lot of discussion on this and looking into it, but we have decided that we're going to revise the policy for FY22 and in support for adjusting the policy, because there are situations where the new grazing plan would require increased capacity. For example, maybe there's not enough water, and the current location of the well is where it needs to be. So there will be these certain situations where we would allow putting a new pump on an existing well in certain situations. There will need to be some certification from a well driller, for example. We're putting all of that policy into place, and we'll get that rolled out. So I think that's good news, and it will allow some flexibility, in the case-by-case situation. So we'll make that happen. Another one on pumping plants, several, but just basically dealing with how the scenarios were worded in the horsepower of the pumps. It's a little bit confusing as to which scenario should be used in certain situations. And so that is under review, and probably just we'll need to get some guidance out to the field too, so that they have more instruction on exactly which one to use. Livestock shelter structure. I got some feedback from one of the local work groups that they would like to see some possible changes in the design for the livestock shelter structures, because some of it's tough to get the right materials. Materials just aren't locally available with the design standards we have in place. So, and of course, the reasons those are high priorities in some part of the states, and so that would replace the need to plant eastern red cedar in a windbreak. And so that is currently under review to see if there's anything that can be changed with that one. Underground outlets always get a lot of recommendations to add scenarios, add different options for different sizes of pipe or different material of pipe. It was decided there wouldn't be any changes for FY22, but we're taking a look at that and see if we do need to see if there's some other scenarios available out there, someplace we can bring in, or if we need to make some edits to existing scenarios. So again, there won't be any changes for the FY22 payment schedule, but we're going to keep looking at that to see if there's some changes we can make. Request for a wetland enhancement scenario, an excavation or saturated riparian sites, that's under review. Carryover from last year, it said would look at it again, the request to add a new practice for ditching. And after this was looked at and reviewed, it was determined that with the current conservation practice standards, that this could be done with the current standards for field ditches and subsurface drainage and that. So there isn't any other practices we can bring in for that. And so again, this would be some guidance that we'll get out to the field as needed to help out with that. And then another carryover from last year was looking at the issue of the payment rates and determining whether they're too high or too low. And the issue that came in was we just simply didn't have enough receipts or bills submitted to make that determination in some cases. So last year we made the decision that we would monitor this situation again in FY21. And then if it's still a problem, if we still do not have enough representative samples of projects which were installed and receipts which have been received, if that's still the case after this year, then we will look at implementing a QAR follow-up system where we can request bills for QAR purposes, quality assurance review, to make sure that our payments are within reason. And so this is being monitored as we speak, and if we need to, then we'll establish some type of process, at least in certain areas, to collect some bills for that purpose. So all we can do is ask for bills to be submitted. We can't require bills to be submitted, but anyway, that's kind of where that stands. And then just overall, there were multiple recommendations for changing payment rates on practices. This is always the case, and this is why we ask. It's very helpful, kind of related to the previous item. If it's if we do have excuse me, if we do have some evidence that our payments are excessively high or excessively low, then we can adjust those. So we had recommendations on 20 practices to adjust the payment rates, and so we will be looking at those and probably following up with some of those local work groups as we set those rates for FY22. We asked if there's any recommendation to put payment caps on certain practices. The only new one that we had this year was for conservation crop rotation to set a cap of 5,500. So we'll review that, and then several recommendations to take a look at our caps as related to historically underserved participants. The way we have it as established now in the payment schedule, historically underserved, like a beginning farmer or socially disadvantaged, would not be able to apply as many acres of, say, a cover crop as a non-historically underserved participant. So we'll be making adjustments to that to make that equitable, and and we'll look at the crop rotation. And then finally, we like to get the feedback on what works and what doesn't on application cutoff dates and ranking cutoff dates and obligation cutoff dates throughout the state. And as would be expected, we had multiple recommendations. We even went out to other states this year to see what they were doing for their established cutoff dates. We've got that information. But all in all, last year our cutoff dates for CSP and EQIP was November 20th. And we had recommendations to do it earlier. We had recommendations to do it later, have cutoffs later. The majority, however, were in the late October, November timeframe. And then the ranking deadlines, again, came in all over the place. But last year we had a late January ranking deadline, and it looks like it may line up to be that again for FY22. So that's it for me. And I guess I'd stop here for a second, see if there's any questions. Any questions for me before we move on? I don't see anything in the chat. Okay. So if not, then I guess we'll move on to the next topic. That's the RCPP update with Tammy Timms. And Tammy, are you ready to take off from here?
I am here. Get my screen up here to share with you folks. All right, Brad, should be there on your screen, correct?
Yep, sure is. Yep.
Great. Well, first off, I just want to say it's nice to meet you all, and thanks for joining us today. Initiative side of our program staff, there's a lot going on, and so I'll be spending the next half hour or so with you folks just to review where we're at and what we've got going on so far. So Farm Bill 14 RCPP projects typically are written as a cooperative agreement or memorandum of understanding as far as our agreements. And a lot of times what makes the difference between the cooperative agreements and the MOUs is whether or not there's partner technical assistance reimbursement. So as you can see here, we had two of them that were cooperative agreements. We have the cropland cover for soil health and wildlife, which is with the Nebraska Game and Parks Commission, and then the Papillion Creek site watershed plan 1. And then under the memorandum of understandings, we have the Ogallala Aquifer and Platte River, the Republican Basin Conservation Partnership, Wahoo Creek water quality sites, and then the divots and the pivots. So those are currently, well, I'll give you an update on each one of those here as we go. The Ogallala Aquifer and Platte River Recovery Project started in 2015, and our lead partner for that is the Central Platte NRD. They were awarded $2.7 million. And as you can see here, it's a great partnership between Platte NRD and then several other irrigation districts. This project actually expired May 13th of this year. And we have some funds remaining in there for FA, financial assistance, but we're reserving that money for modifications if we need them for existing contracts with the producers. Some of the accomplishments of this RCPP project was we had a total number of producer contracts of 64. And as you can see through the practices, 328 is conservation crop rotation, on down to the sprinkler conversions, pipeline, pumping plants. There's been some great benefits to the practices and conservation there through this project. So it was a very successful project. Cropland cover for soil health and wildlife. That was agreement also that we had that started in 2016. Our lead partner was the Nebraska Game and Parks Commission. They were awarded $700,000. That actually expired. This project expired December 31st of 2020. There are some remaining funds in there as well for financial assistance, but again, we're reserving those for modifications with any contracts we have with our producers. Project accomplishments, we had total of 72 producer contracts. And through the cover crops program, we treated almost 7,000 acres, and then access control along with that was around 6,000 acres. The Republican Basin Conservation Partnership project, that started in 2016. It will expire here this coming August. Lead partner on that one is the Lower Republican NRD. $2.1 million was awarded to them. And again, we have some remaining financial assistance funds that we'll be using for any modifications we need to producer contracts. The goals to the Republican Basin Conservation Partnership was conversion of irrigated to dry land, conversion through the end gun retirement, irrigation efficiency, moisture sensor technology, and micro irrigation, and also improve wildlife habitat with soil health. So here again, this project has been a great accomplishment with 100 producer contracts. And again, you can see some of the effects there too with the practices on the land that were implemented. Got two RCPP projects that are through the PL 566 flood control program, well, side of the RCPP. The Wahoo Creek started in 2017. So that one is $1.5 million, partner contributions of 1.6. So that one is currently in the watershed planning stage there in the Lower Platte North NRD. And I believe we're going to be extending this project out a year to allow some time for design or for actual construction of the structure. Papillion Creek site, that agreement started in 2018. Our lead partner there is the Papio Missouri River NRD. They were awarded $4.46 million. And again, it's in the planning stage as well, but they'll have the design and construction hopefully going and completed in 2022 into 2023. Divots and the Pivots was an agreement that we had started in 2017. Our lead partner is the Upper Big Blue NRD, roughly $1.9 million there. That's in a partnership with several different partners there helping the Upper Big Blue out. That one's set to expire next September. The goal of this project is to restore wetlands by enrolling ASAP ALE and ASAP WRE $1.1 million and upgrading irrigation to the variable rate index with EQIP $250,000. So the project accomplishments so far is we have 3 EQIP contracts. You can see the variable rate is, we got 1 in place right now on 131 acres, irrigation water management on 343 acres, and then 1 pumping plant. And then as far as on the ASAP side of things, we have 4 agreements with 5 parcels closed, and then WRE, we have 2 agreements with 1 parcel closed. So the Farm Bill 18 RCPP projects, a whole other story when you compare it to the Farm Bill 14 projects, as we were finding out. We don't use cooperative agreements or memorandum of understandings. What we use instead is what's called a programmatic partnership agreement, and it requires a whole different software system as well. Supplemental agreements is what we use to actually reimburse our partners for technical assistance. Landowner contracts are now no longer, we don't use that term, we use land management / rental contracts with producers. The RCP program rules that used to be covered by EQIP, well, they're covered by EQIP and CSP policy, but RCPP is a program of its own now. For our contracting tool in writing producer contracts, it used to be ProTrax, and now we're actually using our conservation desktop, and that software is actually under construction as we go through the process. We've got it to where we can enter applications, assess and rank, but that's about as far as we can go. So as far as our Farm Bill 18 RCPP projects, the one that we have working on right now is the Resilient Futures for Nebraska Soils. That is a project that we have started with the Nature Conservancy Group for $4.3 million. and they're matching it with another 4.4 million. So it's a huge project in partnership with Cargill, McDonald's, Upper Big Blue NRD, and the Central Platte NRD. The goals of this project is to enroll 100,000 acres over 5 years, store 150,000 metric tons of carbon, prevent 375,000 tons of soil erosion, and then just to link producers to carbon credit companies like ESMC. And the 3 practices we're focusing on are 328, crop rotation for small grain and perennial, 329 no-till, and 340 cover crops. So we're currently under a application sign up, and the deadline will be June 15th. I haven't seen what the full numbers are right now, but I know there's a lot of interest from a lot of producers though in those 2 energy areas. And so sign up is limited to land within those energy boundaries, not counties. So the word is being spread out through the NRDs who are doing a lot of the marketing. Cropland cover for soil health and wildlife. This is a renewal. So as you noted earlier, I had mentioned the benefits of the project as a Farm Bill 14. Now as a Farm Bill 18, we're going to be going for the same goals again, to plant 7,000 acres of multi-species cover crop, allowing grazing to maximum of 75%, so we're leaving 25% for the wildlife. The same practices, 340 cover crops, 472 access control. And again, that's the continuation of the project basically that we had started with the Nebraska Game and Parks Commission. So for another $700,000. The plan is to have the sign up starting this fall. Ogallala Aquifer and Platte River Recovery Project. Again, this is another renewal. It was so successful under the Farm Bill 14 that they applied for a renewal and were accepted and selected. So we're currently working on the agreement, but that's going to be again with the Central Platte NRD for another $2.7 million. So the goal again is to continue reduction of water consumption and depletions by converting irrigated to dry land for efficient irrigation methods and technologies. And so you can see all of the practices that we had in the initial project are going to be continued on through this renewal. The Nebraska Forest Restoration Partnership is, we were one of 10 in the nation to be selected. And so we were really excited to see the Nebraska Forest Service get this project selected. So we're currently in negotiations for the agreement. And this is an alternative funding arrangement type RCPP, which is, again, it's just a different method of administering the funds. Basically, the difference is that the Nebraska Forest Service is going to be administering all the financial assistance funds out to the producers rather than it being us. And there are 16 NRDs that are in partnership with the Nebraska Forest Service, and the Nebraska Game Parks Commission is also involved. The goals of this project are to restore 5% of the open cottonwood forests, renovate 5% of the declining windbreaks, recover 10% lost windbreak cover, and then just overall increase landowners' knowledge of tree management. There are going to be 6 practices involved with this project. We're going to have a forest stand improvement and fence, which are going to be directly administered out of the Nebraska Forest Service. So we're working directly with producers on those. And then the 4 left, windbreak establishment, windbreak renovation, tree shrub site prep, and tree shrub establishment. That's the NRDs are basically are working for the Nebraska Forest Service to help implement those 4 practices to our producers. And then just a quick map to show that area. It is a statewide project, but the focus for those last 4 practices are going to be in the green areas, which were then the contributing 16 natural resource districts. They're shown in green. And then the forest stand improvement focus areas are going to be what you see outlined in the brown with little dots all over in there. But so anyway, we're really excited to get this agreement going and get these projects out on the land there and start working with producers. So again, congratulations to the Nebraska Forest Service for this one. And I know there's a lot of interest in this one already because we're already getting questions from producers from the field offices. The Platte and Playa Wetland Protection Project, that was one that just was selected under our most current RCPP Classic sign up. And This is with the Ducks Unlimited, $1.3 million, and partner contributions of about 2.0 million. And again, we have several different NRDs and other partners involved in this project as well. The goals of this one are 640 acres entity-held easements. There are going to be restoration easements for croppable wetland ground, and then so that's the difference between RCPP, where it allows some flexibility. The wetlands on WRE cannot be cropped, but here they will be. Conservation land easements, so that's to protect land from being developed. And those are going to be adjacent to playa wetlands. So wetland on site is not required. Again, that's another flexibility that RCPP is allowing. So then another goal is to have 100 acres of protected wetland and restored wetlands. And then just cubic yards removed from wetlands for additional flood water storage. So currently under negotiations with Ducks Unlimited and working on the programmatic partnership agreement. And I think we have a deadline. Well, we know we have a deadline of July 15th to get that done. Hopefully we can meet that. Another RCPP project that was just recently selected was one that we have in connection or in conjunction with South Dakota. And so this building ranch resiliency is going to be basically managed mostly by South Dakota Nrcs. So since it was just selected, it's still under negotiations as far as the agreement goes. Lead partner is the World Wildlife Fund for $1.4 million, and they're contributing $1.7 million through themselves and partners. The goals of this 3-year project are going to be grazing management, fencing, water development, ranch systems, finance training, marketing, diversification, and estate planning, wildlife management. So just an overall ranch systems training management for producers. To leverage the World Wildlife Fund ranch systems and viability planning network, and then improve plant condition on 100,000 acres on 40 ranches. And the next is just a map of that RCPP project area. So you can see it hits into northwest Nebraska and then captures a lot of the western half of South Dakota. So just a couple of notes about RCPP and Farm Bill 18 changes. Again, RCPP is now a standalone program. So that means it's going to have its own manual, it has its own policy, it has its own forms. So definitely under construction. Currently, we are still using the application that we had in effect back in March of 2019. They will be coming out with a new form. And then there is a separate application appendix 2 that goes along with that 1200 application that we need to give to producers. Changes in producer contracts. As I mentioned earlier, the ProTrax contracts are no longer going to be used. Instead, we're calling them land management rental contracts, and they're going to be developed through Conservation Desktop. So the applications will be entered in CD, the ranking will be done in CD, and we'll actually be developing all the contracts, payments, contract administration. That all will be done through Conservation Desktop. And so Conservation Desktop has been going through a lot of changes and a lot of updates to try to get to where it can help us, well, where we can manage RCPP through it. Changes in the agreement and reimbursement software. So again, we aren't using cooperative agreements or memorandum of understandings anymore. We're using programmatic partnership agreements. And then we're doing reimbursements with supplemental agreements. And all of those are going to be done through the RCPP programs. Well, it's called Programs Portal, but we were always calling it the RCPP Portal because that's what it initially was. No longer using Easy Fed grants. So this is an added slide that I just did here's not too long ago, but RCPP flexibilities. So the AGI waivers, we can do for our projects, we can use what we do for EQIP and CSP, where if there is a producer who has met the AGI limit, we can request a waiver individually for just that person. But through RCPP, you can also do a project-wide AGI waiver. And so that allows any and all producers to sign up. They still have to complete an AGI form with FSA. That doesn't negate them from doing that, but there is that option to just totally override all producers for an actual project. Payment limitations has been removed for RCPP. Contract limitation is 450,000 or 900,000, depending on the type of entity. And then RCPP can also have a separate cost list, so we can have higher rates or lower rates than what we use currently for EQIP or CSP. So for fiscal year 2022, they just closed actually a request for proposals this last Friday for under the national funding announcement. So looking at what we've got in our portal, which is again the RCP or the programs portal, again is the software we're using for programs now, definitely for RCPP. And we have in there 5 proposals that we're involved with. 2 of them were actually, we were listed as a lead state, but then the other 3 we were listed as basically adjoining states. But they're focusing on organic farming. 2 of them are focusing on grassland conservation, 1 on atmospheric nitrates, and then the other was soil carbon amendments. All right, so the Voluntary Public Access and Habitat Incentive Program, we have a grant agreement with the Nebraska Game and Parks that was received back in May of 2020. And so $3 million of federal funds, 500,000 of non-federal funds. And the primary objective of the VPA and the HIP is to encourage owners and operators to just allow access of the public to enjoy wildlife dependent recreation like hunting and fishing. So far through that program, we have seen 234,000 acres opened up for public use and around 4,200 WRP acres that were also enrolled into the VPA. The Bureau of Land Reclamation has their Water Smart program, and Brad touched on this a little bit, but here you can see there are 6 different programs that Bureau of Reclamation has, and one of them is that Water Smart grant. So they have their separate Water Smart grant opportunities and through their Water Conservation and Efficiency program under that Water Smart grant program. And Nrcs is basically supplementing the Bureau of Reclamation's program by having our own EQIP Water Smart Landscape Conservation Initiative. As mentioned earlier, Middle Republic NRD has around $500,000, and it looks like we've got $140,000 obligated so far with producers. Priority resource concern is irrigation water use inefficiency. Then the Upper Republic NRD also was awarded funds, $250,000. Priority resource concerns there, irrigation water use inefficiency, nutrients transported to groundwater, plant productivity, and health. So under the EQIP Water Smart initiative, we do have out there that new proposals are due June 4th. And you can find information about the EQIP Water Smart initiative at the following website, or you can give myself or Connor Ward a call. We can help you out with any questions. I guess that would be tomorrow, would be the deadline. National Water Quality Initiative. So we have 4 NWQIs. We have the Brazil Creek, which is included in the Lower Elkhorn NRD, Lewis and Clark NRD, and Upper Elkhorn NRD. We have the Wahoo Creek in the Lower Platte North, Turkey Creek in the Lower Big Blue NRD, and then Big Sandy in the Little Blue NRD. So currently right now in the implementation phases, we have Turkey Creek and the Brazil Creek. And then in the planning stages, we have Wahoo. So for fiscal year 2021, our NWQI allocation total was 1.8 million. In Big Sandy, we've allocated 285,000. Wahoo Creek is nothing because it's still in the planning stage. Brazil Creek, 855,000, and then in Turkey Creek, 712,000. Currently within our contracting system, we're showing 1 application in the Big Sandy for 13,000. We've got 38 applications in the Bazille Creek, well exceeding the amount, the amount requested is well exceeding what we've got available. And then in the Turkey Creek, we have 3 applications for 93,000. So currently we have $1.2 million that are pending contract approval. So just recently we had a national bulletin come out that requested whether or not we wanted to look into adding any watersheds to our NWQI. We wanted to withdraw any current projects or request any new source water protection areas. And so we met with the Nebraska Department of Environment and Energy, and we're going to basically just continue with what we're doing in the Bazille, continue outreach programs in the Turkey Creek and Big Sandy area, and continue the planning process with the Wahoo to hopefully move it into the implementation stage. Okay, so if you have any questions on what was presented up to this point, please get a hold of me and I'll address them. I'm going to move into conservation innovation grants, urban agriculture and innovation, conservation collaboration grant agreements on behalf of Neil Dominy, who is out today. But national CIG, conservation initiative grants, those are funds that for the development of promising approaches and technologies. And some CIGs are successful, some are not, but I guess that's why you try. Funding is rarely provided directly to producers. That is because while the national CIG is working on the development of these approaches and technologies, the idea is that through or because of a national CIG, EQIP projects will be encouraged by the producers. So it's supposed to encourage the producers to come to our door and sign up for cost share or seek assistance or technical guidance. Projects often include small-scale pilot or demonstrations. So in 2019, Nebraska was awarded, well, the University of Nebraska was awarded their, they call it a TAPS, but it's Testing Ag Performance Solutions for $850,000, and that includes Nebraska, Oklahoma, Colorado, and Kansas. But it's for accelerating adopting of water conservation technologies and management practices through innovative engagement programs. So University of Nebraska has a farm down over by McCook that way. And so they're basically getting farmer teams or business persons or agency to basically develop these teams to learn about a basic farm production system from beginning of the crop year to the end of the crop year. How's the irrigation working? Is that system didn't work? What type of nutrient management system are you going to use? So it's a really neat project. We didn't have any national CIGs awarded to us directly in 2020. So then we also have the conservation incentive grants on-farm trials. So those are funds for the implementation and evaluation of innovative approaches, systems, or practices that we know provide a conservation benefit. Funding must be provided directly to producers to offset implementation risk, and then partners must complete both conservation and economic evaluations. So soil health demo trial awardees must agree to use consistent assessment methods. In 2019, the University of Nebraska was awarded the an on-farm trial, CIG, for adoption of precision ag nitrogen management through Nebraska On-Farm Research Network. So that was $1.2 million. And then the Soil and Water Conservation Society for advancing precision ag and soil health with retailers got up to $1.4 million. And again, that's Nebraska, Kansas, and Iowa CIG. And then no CIGs were awarded directly to Nebraska in 2020. So the national funding announcements for CIG is currently out there. And on-farm trials, the deadline will be June 21st. For National Classic, it's going to be July 19th. And you can see the funding that's available for projects across the nation. And there's also the website provided as well for additional information or for the funding announcement. Urban agriculture and innovative production. So there's a grant opportunity for urban projects. Planning projects initiate or expand efforts of farmers, gardeners, citizens, government officials, schools, other stakeholders in urban areas and suburbs. And projects may target areas of food access, education, business, and startup costs for new farmers, urban agroforestry or food forests, and development of policies. And there's also the implementation project side to accelerate existing and emerging models of urban, indoor, and other agricultural practices that serve multiple farmers. So those through that grant program, they have $4 million available. Proposals are due here July 31st. So there's the website for additional information as well as probably application information. For the conservation collaboration agreements for this year, the purpose of leveraging Nrcs resources, addressing local natural resource issues, encouraging collaboration, and developing state and community level conservation leadership. And they just had, a deadline for selection, and I think it's on the next slide, but emphasis was given to projects that address these points: build technical capacity to implement Farm Bill conservation programs, build technical capacity of Nrcs and partner field conservation employees, build the capacity of local partners to develop and implement effective projects, and then leverage non-federal and non-government resources to achieve positive natural resources conservation outcomes. So the notice of funding for those closed on May 10th, and 8 total projects were received to our office. 5 proposals are being moved forward to formal agreements. The emphasis of those 5 proposals are to work on prescribed fire, urban ag, practice implementation follow-up, sentinel satellite use and development, and then woody species encroachment challenges in the grassland area of Nebraska. So for more information on any of those slides, please contact Neil Dominy at his email or phone number shown below. And that is it. Any questions?
Okay, thank you, Tammy. Any questions for Tammy? And I encourage anybody to use the message box, the chat box. Reminder for anyone who's not familiar with Teams, in the bar up top, there's that little message bubble. If you click on that, then you'd be able to type a message for chat, or just go ahead and unmute your microphone and give us a verbal question. Okay, well, not seeing any. Thanks, Tammy. And I guess we'll just move right along. Next up is Carlos Villarreal, our state soil scientist, and he's going to give us an update on wetland compliance and conservation technology. So, Carlos, are you ready?
Yeah, Brad, I'm ready to go. Let me share my screen and I'll try to get started here. Okay. All right. Well, I would do full screen, but I don't know where the button is. So hopefully you can read everything in the in my PowerPoint here. Today I'm going to give a presentation briefly on wetland team updates and conservation business systems. And we'll kick it off with wetland compliance team. So I guess Brad didn't learn his lesson last time, and he agreed to let me speak again today. So it's good to be with y'all. My name is Carlos Villarreal. I'm the state soil scientist, and on our team, we have the wetland compliance team for Nebraska. We handle all of the preliminary wetland determinations for the state, and also the reconsiderations and appeals and a lot of different, or all activities related to wetland compliance. So we stay pretty busy on our team. We have a group of 12 wetland compliance specialists or biologists who work on those activities. And a big announcement that came out yesterday, we have the opportunity to hire 4 new wetland biologists on our team through the direct hire authority opportunity. and those positions are advertised in Ord, St. Paul, Lincoln, and Stanton. Most of our workload is going to be in the eastern part of the state, but we do have the occasional Sandhills or Playa system wetland requests in the central area as well. So we're trying to expand our team, and with that comes many challenges with trainings and mentoring new employees, those types of things. So we're doing great through COVID and all that, but yeah, it's an exciting time to be a wetland specialist, that's for sure. And also this summer we took on 2 Pathways summer interns in Lincoln State Office and Blair, 1 student from UNL and 1 student from UNO in Omaha. Okay, the wetland compliance activities this year. I'm not the best at making graphs, but I think I did an okay job of showing our certified wetland determinations over the last 3 years. In 2019, we had about 1,600. In 2020, we had 1,900, and this year we're projected to at least increase by another 10 to 15% in requests. So we're not, with our gaining staff, we're hoping that we can continue to eliminate any backlog of determinations we have and continue to facilitate wetland compliance through our team. You can see here in 2021, we've already completed about 679. We are currently processing about 100. That means these are determinations that are being worked on as we speak. And pending pickup is about 344. And that number fluctuates anywhere from 280 to 355 at any given time. Right now, our turnaround is a little over a month and a half. So we're getting to them. We are having some issues with data access when we're doing offsite determinations, and then scheduling days in the field to go out and visit these sites was another challenge, obviously, over the winter. But we've been focusing a lot this spring on getting those determinations completed in the field data collection, and now we're ready to start rocking and rolling on processing the new determinations. So next, we'll talk about conservation business systems update. We've had an opportunity this spring. I don't want to steal any thunder for any future presentations, but the National Conservation Partnership Plan. So the NCPP is a group of agencies that come together to work on advancing conservation efforts, voluntary conservation efforts. And their goal is to advance our ability as an agency to deliver sound conservation planning assistance. So we were invited to develop a plan for the state, and part of that plan involved business systems, which semi involves the soil section here at the state office. So we do have a goal that we have in our proposed plan right now, and that's to increase the efficiency with workload products and processes to increase the amount of time conservation planners can be in the field, with producers providing quality conservation planning assistance. So essentially, it's the buzzwords of streamline and efficiency and technology. That's our goal in developing a conservation business systems plan. Conservation business systems strategic plan. In this strategic plan, I like to illustrate it as a 3-legged stool. And so each leg has a name. In this situation, we have Conservation Assessment Ranking Tool, or CART task force. As Tammy alluded to, we are moving away from ProTrax, and we're starting to incorporate more of our contract management and contract development into these new conservation desktop and CART tools. So with that, we have a lot of information, a lot of training that needs to be delivered to the conservation planners, to our field staff, to our administrative staff on how to facilitate, how to incorporate those new activities through these technology tools. So part of the strategic plan will be developing maybe a flow chart of a workflow of how that information is going to be delivered, who's going to give it, and assign responsibilities to different staff in the state. Also, business technology, with a lot of the technology being taken out of the office, and being able to use technology in the field while we're doing conservation planning, while we're writing conservation practice information. We're collecting data from producers. We're collecting soils information, vegetative data. Those are types of things that we can start to use these technology tools for. So then another job for us would be to decide what technology is useful, what technology should be used, and again, training how we're going to deliver that information to the field offices. And then business tools, that's deciding on how we will, as a state, develop tools, how we will get information from the field on what tools are needed, those types of things. So this is a strategic plan that'll be really centric on business systems, and obviously with the goal of improving conservation planning, or the access of conservation planning from our field offices. Another exciting opportunity for the state is we'll be hiring a state business tools coordinator, and this will be the person who will initially be coordinating the development, adoption, and implementation of the Nebraska Conservation Business System Strategic Plan. We're an agency of acronyms and abbreviations, so NCBSSP is what we're going to go with. But that'll be the person who can delegate trainings, who can decide how we can develop, implement, and adopt this strategic plan. So we're hoping that this position can get hired on maybe in the fall, and we'll start fresh at the beginning of the next fiscal year. And lastly, our goal, or part of our proposal, was to develop a state technology tools committee for the state, who identifies barriers, deficiencies, and opportunities in conservation activities where technology could be supportive. I mentioned earlier, collecting soils information, veg data, those types of things that we do in the field that are time consuming. What tools can we use? What technology could we use to better facilitate that for our conservation planner, to allow them more time to work with a producer, to ask questions, or to gather more data when they're in the field, be more efficient with their time. Oversee the development of new technology tools. We want to have a system where we have ownership of tools. We assign someone as the representative or the subject matter expert for a specific tool. I'll stick with the veg data again. If it's the state range specialist who's responsible for that, then we assign it to them, and they can oversee the development. If there's any improvements that need to be made, or anything that just doesn't work out the way it should be, and we don't anticipate it to work, then they would be the person who would give us that information. And then obviously we're going to solicit and provide feedback on current tools. We've got a ton of tools that we're using right now that may be outdated, maybe policy has changed a little bit, so they need to be adapted to the new policy or new programs. So we, all together with these three bullets in our NCPP to enhance conservation planning, we feel like we can hopefully solve at least a few problems using technology in this capacity. And that is it. Man, that went by fast. Sorry, Brad. I hope you weren't expecting me to take up too much time.
Well, no, thank you, Carlos. I thought maybe you'd sing and dance or something for a few minutes.
Well, I feel like I was, Brad.
Okay. Very good. Is there any questions for Carlos? They say just unmute to ask a question or chat if that works better. All right. Well, thanks, Carlos. Okay, so we'll move on. Next up is FSA, the update on CRP changes and CRP management. So Levain or Jana,
Yes,
who's
Brad. Brad,
okay.
it's Levain. I'll go ahead and then Jenna will step in later in the part of her presentation after what I go through on CRP. We'll talk about some management updates as well. Thanks for having us today. We were hoping to have a little more information that we've got a go to just start pushing through all these CRP updates and changes that came out in April, but we were informed that we're hoping in the next couple of weeks we're going to have the go ahead to start taking these offers and doing what we need to do to apply all these changes that have come down because we weren't getting the signups that we wanted or the national office wanted. So they stopped and relooked at the program to see what kind of incentives and where we want to branch out to provide additional increase in carbon sequestration, our soil rental rates. What can we do to make this a little more enticing to get more enrollment and get the benefits out of this enrollment for the climate control is kind of a high topic of why we're making these changes as well. So I'm going to jump through some of the CRP updates. We'll kind of go through the changes. This is what's going to happen. We just don't have the software to apply it yet. So, and we'll have more details and more information as we go forward. But right now, this is kind of what's going to happen once we can start taking those, processing those offers that we have or take the new offers that we needed to take that we were stopped in the process. So currently CRP enrollment nationwide, we have over 20.8 million acres, which is below the goal that they wanted for 2021. So that's another part of the reason we're not meeting that goal. So we're going to stop and relook at the program, and that's what they've done here. Changes to enrollment, we're going to try to increase their goal is to increase the cap from 24 million to 27 million acres by 2023. 7 million acres will expire in the next couple years. That's nationwide. CRP enrollment in Nebraska, as of March 2021, we have right under 1.3 million acres enrolled in CRP, but we're going to have, like you see there in 21, 95, almost 96,000 acres that are going to be expiring, and then again in 2022. Little over 80,000, and in 23, a little over 51,000. General sign up, we started general sign up in on January 4th of 2021, and it was to go till February 12th of 2021. And then on February 5th, it was announced sign up was extended until further notice. So we kept on taking applications, not sure what was going to happen. Continuous sign up, come April of 2021, we were stopped to approve any of our continuous signups because of all these changes. We're not certain how those offers that were approved, how that's going to affect those, if we can go back and apply these changes, or if they're going to, once they're approved, they're approved. CRP grasslands, we had a sign up initially announced for March, middle of March to the middle of April. That was stopped at the time on February 5th, where they informed us that general sign up will continue and grasslands will not start. And then also the other change update is our SHIP program, which is our CRP Soil Health and Income Protection Program. That's only eligible for prairie pothole region states, so it's not eligible in Nebraska. And those states that are eligible under this program are listed there: Iowa, Minnesota, North Dakota, and South Dakota. Okay, so what are the changes? We're going to jump into those for you. overall update is, as Jeff had stated earlier in his opening statement to everybody, the increase of collaboration with partners and USDA agencies, and mainly with CRP and our other conservation programs, we're looking at climate benefits and environmental performances. And for us, it's for CRP, and then also the increase with technical assistance through Nrcs, and that's another thing that Jeff had commented earlier. With the collaboration, that's going to improve the environmental benefits and increase program effectiveness and increase in program enrollments. And then the technical assistance, the extra technical assistance that we'll have is to work with those producers to plan and implement conservation practices as appropriate and for their needs. Have a little more out there, producer or NRCS or technical assistance available to assist with those producers to help them make those management decisions and to do what's best out there, as well as providing the practices that will give us the climate benefits and the environmental performances that we are trying to provide under this Farm Bill. Okay, so we're going to kind of go through what's new with general sign-up, what's new at continuous grasslands. So we're going to start with general sign-up. The new there is the Climate Smart Practice Incentive. What this incentive will do is, what our hopes are to do on this is to increase carbon sequestration and then reduce the greenhouse gas emissions to mitigate climate control. The incentive increases rates basically are broken down by the type of practice that you're going to be putting out there. So anywhere from, it's going to be like a 3% or a 5% or 10% incentive for the Climate Smart Practice Incentive. And the 3% rates are going to be applied to like your native grasses, your CP8A, your grass waterways, your filter strips, your wetland restoration practices. The 5% will apply to your CP1s, which are your introduced grasses, 15A, which is your contour grasses, CP33, your habitat buffer for wildlife, and then the 10% is going to be applied to your tree practices. So your trees are going to be the ones that will be providing us that carbon sequestration. So you're going to get a higher incentive for those tree practices that you enroll in or re-enroll. And as you can see, I'm just going to go through the updates on the left side, and then we'll talk about those benefits. So the additional one-time 10% inflationary adjustment for the life of the contract, that is basically what it's saying. They implemented the inflation and applying that as an incentive for all contracts. That applies to continuous and general. And that'll start at the beginning of the contract and will be factored into their soil rental rate, that 10%. And then the third item there, adjustment of county rental rates. We're using the soil productivity index, and they're using a range from 50 to 150%. Currently, when we look at our county rental rates, we only adjust downward for the lower productivity soils, and that was based on at 50 to 100%. Now we're going to adjust those county rental soils by looking at the soil productive index ranging from 50 to 150%. But we're also going to be looking at, along with NRCS National Commodity Crop Production Index, to normalize that county rental rate by the soils within each county. So it's going to be more targeted towards those individual soils and give the benefits to each of those soils, along with, like I said, NRCS's Commodity Crop Index as well. So it's going to be more specific to that soil, and then those rates will be updated. Soil rental rates will reflect those productivity indexes as the producer provides their information on what they're enrolling. And the benefits of all these are to definitely get more land enrolled into CRP, maximize the benefits for climate mitigation and increase payments, of course. That's the go, along with encouraging the producers to put that land in that needs to be into CRP and not crops. Okay, then we'll go into continuous. Those first 3 bullets, it's the same as what I talked about on general. So the only difference from general to continuous is there's an increase of water quality incentive. Under the 2018 Farm Bill, they implemented a 10% increase for water quality practices. Now they increased that to 20%. I do not see any of your slides. Jana?
I'm seeing them, so I'm not sure.
It's Bruce from Buffalo.
Yeah, I see his comment, but
or Bruce Buffalo.
And it's presenting.
yeah, I'm not sure why he can't see them. Sorry, Bruce. I can see them from my side
Okay.
as well. So
I only see some jars
Jars.
from the last presentation.
Oh.
Oh wow, I wonder why. You might want to. I would suggest maybe see them or get out and come back in, maybe, because you might be frozen.
Yeah.
Probably. You know, Tammy, you want me to wait a few minutes?
Yeah, give him just a couple of seconds here. Sorry, I don't know.
No, that's okay. 'Cause somebody else did say that they're seeing them, so he might have been just the only one so far.
Give me just a second here and let me just double check and see if he got back in.
Okay.
Got it.
There we go.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Carlos said he forgot to mention the soil health jars. Always want to promote soil health. He made a comment. All right, so we'll jump back in. So the first 3 bullets, like I said, I addressed on the general sign up, so I won't go over those. Those are the same. They apply the same way to continuous as they do general. The only difference there is that we're going to start with the 4th bullet, which is on the left side, which is to increase water quality incentive from 10 to 20. I stated that the 2018 Farm Bill provided a 10% water quality incentive for those practices that are water quality practices, and now they're increasing it to 20%. The other thing they did is move our state acres for wildlife from general sign up to continuous sign up. Unfortunately for Nebraska, that's not going to take effect until October 1 of 2021, which is our next fiscal year sign up. And the reason that is when our partners and us got together and put together a proposal, we had to make a lot of adjustments because we had the upland bird safe and we had the prairie chicken safe. And they were similar, so they wanted us to combine those 2 safes. And then we had to make more adjustments than that we were prepared in the time period that we had. So then in looking at the CP38 practice for general, our CP25 practice rare and declining habitat provided us the benefits that our safe would have provided us for general. So we decided to step back from going forward with that proposal until this year to relook at it. And unfortunately, we didn't realize that these changes were going to happen. So that is why in Nebraska, we have to wait till October 1 of next year, which is our fiscal year 2022, to take offers. We'll have to resubmit that safe proposal, and get it approved before we can actually take offers under safe, now under continuous. So that's the change there. Unfortunately, it's a great change, but we can't implement it till 2022. Also, highly erodible land initiative, HELI, is now available both under CRP, general and continuous. Previously, it was just available under general, but now we can offer it under continuous. And there's, of course, there's certain practices that are eligible under HELI, but that's really the AGLI initiative is if your land has a weighted erodible index of 20 or greater and it meets the cropping history and ownership eligibility, then you automatically are in under continuous, where when it was under general, you had to wait for a ranking criteria as well as the safe under general. And again, the benefits for this, it's repetitious. It's the same as, we want the use of enrolling land for carbon sequestration, encourage land enrollment, and also provide those producers with increased incentives to make it more competitive and willing to enroll that land that needs to be in CRP and not cropped, to provide better rates, better opportunities for these producers to enroll their land into CRP. And that takes us to, I believe, grasslands. And like I stated before, CRP grasslands, as far as we know, they're still planning on having a CRP grassland sign up. And like I said, that sign up was initially planned for March through April, but that has passed. But the intention, as we understand it, is we'll still have a CRP grassland sign up. When or what time or when that sign up will be announced, we're not sure. But the changes to CRP grasslands was to establish a minimum rental rate of $15, which, as you see there, will allow 1,347 counties that are currently under a 15 that are currently under 15 minimum. So some of our counties and most of a big portion of our counties out west, their minimum rental rates when we signed up for grasslands in Nebraska is one of the highest amount of acres in CRP grasslands since the inception of CRP grasslands. So that's going to help our western part of the state to give them at least a minimum $15, because a lot of those were anywhere from 7, 8, 9, 11, 12. So that's going to help Nebraska. I don't know if it helps every state, but this is a good change for us, for those counties out west that have low rental rates. And they're also establishing a national grassland priority zones. So not sure how that's going to affect Nebraska, but that's going to also give us an opportunity to have a better increase in enrollment of grasslands. But it kind of looks at the migratory corridors and environmental sensitive areas. So we're not sure how Nebraska will pan out on that, but that's what's going to happen with a new layer out there for priority zones. But that's set at the national level, not at the state level. And then pilot projects, the expansion of the Clean Lakes, estuaries, and rivers 30-year contracts. They're going to make that available nationwide. And this enables producers across the nation to enter into these long-term contracts and implement practices important to water quality. I'm not sure how we'll end up with any enrollments for 30 years, but you just never know. But that is some of the pilot projects that have changed from when the 2018 Farm Bill of Clear 30 came out. It was just for certain states, but now they're going nationwide to allow more enrollments across the nation under this pilot project. And then we're going to talk about what's new with incentives. We've always had a practice incentive payments, which we call them PIP payments. And those are provided on new land going in. Once they have the practice established, then we always give them a practice incentive payment for certain practices. And they're increasing that from 20%, which the 2018 Farm Bill changed from 5 to 20. And now they're changing it again from 20 to 50% of the actual cost of establishment. So there's an extra incentive on top of what we'll pay for their cost share to establish or get that cover crop seeded. Now the signing incentive payment, which we call SIP, is a one-time incentive payment equal to 32.5% of the first full year annual rental payment. That has not changed. When that come out under the 2018 Farm Bill, they're keeping that as 32.5% with these updated changes now in April. So that one hasn't changed. Okay. And I think that's all I have. I think we'll just let Jana jump into the CRP management activities. And then if you have any questions for both of us, then we'll take those. I don't see any in the chat right now. So Jana, I'll let you jump in.
All right. Thank you, Levine, and good afternoon, everybody. I'm just going to touch base quick on our CRP management activities. There's no big change in them from what we approved last year, but we are required to review them every year. But we decided, you know, from 2020 to 2021, we didn't see a need to change anything on what's required on CRP management. So currently our management activities include the list of the below: the tillage or disking, site-specific herbicide use, prescribed burning, the option to do high-intensity short duration grazing, haying as a standalone practice only on diverse enough grass stands, interseeding if it's required because of that practice not meeting diversity, and like it's notated there. Due to management in the 2018 Farm Bill, they took away cost share for management activities. So CRP now is only going to be required to conduct those management activities at the beginning of a contract if we don't have that diverse stand. Everybody still has to do their mid-management of some sort, but we might not have to do interseeding as much if they meet the diversity of the stand. If they're not meeting diversity, it might take a little bit more work out there to get it back up to practice standards. And just to touch base on the haying and grazing options, if we use that as a management activity, haying is a standalone practice on block enrollments. You have to have enough adequate diversity, just like I stressed on that last slide, in order to be eligible. That diversity's got to be there in order to hay as a standalone practice. If the haying is conducted as management, only half of those acres are going to be used in a year. That producer sure can come back and do it the next year, the other half, but it's going to be limited to 50% in a year when used as management. Again, you can allow haying to count as management on those buffer practices if it's authorized. And then grazing has to be in a high intensity, short duration setting if we intend to use that as management on those enrollments. So producers will always work with NRCS when it comes time to do their management and make sure they're getting the right plan for their CRP contract. If they graze during the nesting season, though, we cannot count that as management. So again, just a quick overview. Nothing changed from last year, but would touch base on what we have out there for CRP management. And that is all I have. Are there any questions for either Levine or I? I
don't see any.
I don't see any in the chat either. If not, I will give it back to you, Tammy. Thank you, everybody.
Okay. Thank you, Levine and Jana.
Sure.
Again, one last shot for questions, either in the chat or unmute. All right, seeing none. So that gets us through the formal part of our agenda. And as I mentioned earlier, now I'd like to open it up to any of you to have an opportunity to give an update or comments that you want to get out in front of the group. Now would be a good time. Just go ahead and turn on your camera and unmute and hop on, and would like to have any updates you might have. So go ahead and hop on if you have anything. Okay, the quiet group, or we're having problems with our microphones, one of the two. But so, all right. I guess thanks everybody for attending today, and as always, you know, feel free if you get to thinking about something or reviewing the PowerPoints or the recording, feel free to shoot us any emails or questions that you might have. Give us a call. Always open to taking your input and getting your comments. And so we'll plan on doing this again. September 9th is the next scheduled State Technical Committee meeting. I'm not sure, as Jeff mentioned, who will be here as the acting state conservationist, but we'll know more at that time. And personally, I'm hoping that we'll be able to start doing these in person sooner or later. Maybe September, maybe not. I think it's kind of dependent on getting to that 70% vaccination rate before we're going to be able to have any in-person meetings from NRCS, but that's yet to be determined. So with that,
Hey, Brad, it's Tammy.
yeah.
Just a quick reminder to those who called in to please email me if you haven't already. I have an 857 number and a couple other numbers that I just would like to know who's on. So thank you.
Okay, well, we'll let you all go, and we'll be talking to everyone later. Thank you.